Thanks very much for joining us up here on stage. Before we start digging into the topic about innovating with impact, so ensuring like research-driven solutions in IDD and the autism care, can we please have a quick introduction, and I will let you introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Is this on? Okay. I'm Dr. Kathleen Ramsey. I'm a clinical psychologist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I work at the Center for Autism Research, helping with clinical support for early autism screening in primary care.
Hello, everyone. Am I on? Yeah. So I am Dr. Heather Nuske. I am at the University of Pennsylvania in the Penn Center for Mental Health, and I do work in digital mental health and autism intervention. I direct the Digital Mental Health Working Group at Penn, and very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Elisabeth Sheridan. I am a clinician scientist, and what that means is I wear several hats in my job. I'm based at Drexel University. I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, so I see lots of families, and that your story resonates deeply because I've been caring for families that have children and adolescents and adults on the autism spectrum for 2 decades now. So that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is seeing patients through our clinic that's mostly research focused. And then I spend a lot of my time doing research, so we have federally funded grants and training and outreach in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think I'll skip the introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Glofcheskie. I'm the founder and CEO of Beme.ai. I founded the company based on my own personal experience with my autistic child. I felt compelled to found Beme, actually. I have a background in clinical science as well.
Thank you. Starting with you, Sarah, if that's okay. You're the founder of Beme, which I understand is a solution that supports autistic children, among other, in their daily lives. Could you tell us how you at Beme have included research when building your solution?
How we support research?
Yeah, how you've included that in making the solutions.
Sure. So we built Beme with the backbone of an EDC, so as an electronic data capture tool, I guess with the robustness behind it that you'd see in a clinical trial. So typically in a clinical trial, you're using tools that are called ePro for electronic patient-reported outcomes, and the data that's collected is often not very rich. So our platform, it collects very rich data. We collect behavioral data, we collect health data, so medical data, and we also collect environmental data. So the data that's collected in a clinical trial, we can look at that data along with all of the other data that we collect. So the endpoint data is highly enriched, and we can do all kinds of very cool things with that data, which we might talk about as well.
Yeah. And there has been quite an interesting research project with you, Dr. Heather Nuske, and with Bancroft and Pletly. Could you tell us a bit more about that project?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start maybe with how we got introduced and sort of where things have gone from there. So a couple of years ago, some students reached out to me from Temple University. They wanted to talk about a project that they were doing where they were partnering with this company called Pletly. And I thought, well, this is a really nice idea. I didn't say before, but I also wear multiple hats. I'm a sibling of a wonderful adult with autism in Australia, where I'm from. And we constantly have issues in terms of trying to have communication work better in our teams, know what's going on, really know what's happening day to day with my brother Joe. And when I heard about this Pletly that was connecting, carers and families together, I thought, well, that sounds great. I want to learn more about this. So I had a conversation with the students, and then later from that, we got connected and started talking. And since the work that I do, the Digital Mental Health Working Group, really works across the whole spectrum of digital health. So we help companies create new features and use research to really inform the systematic development of different features that they want to include. Right up to doing, full-scale randomized control trials in the community. So we started thinking where you're up to, what you're wanting to do as a next step, for the company. And you had talked about the sort of sketches of the idea of Pletly Care, and that you'd already created, Pletly PAL, and that was working well in Norway, and you'd had some traction over here too, but wanted to develop that part more. So we started just sort of laying down, what we're going to do for research. So we were working with Bancroft, and you already had that connection there, which working in residential care to really help develop ways for streamlining communication, allowing people to really know what is going on, with their individuals, with their loved ones during the day. And so we worked to basically build that systematic feedback back into the app. So we got caregivers involved in the project, family members. We showed them the application. We had them download it. They went and tried it for a week. Actually, right at the back over here, we have Camelia Bui, who was doing her thesis on the project, actually, and really spearheaded a lot of the work. Morgan Dunphy is over here as well. They, together with Namisha Desai and another student of mine, Zandros, really helped to gather all this feedback in a very systematic way through interviews and qualitative coding and thematic analysis. So we came up with, really what is the impact of Pletly. And it was really nice to hear Janine talk about before, sort of what was intended to be, the impact of Pletly. And I can speak to a couple of the themes that we're hearing from families. So we were looking at acceptability. Do people like it? Appropriateness, how is it really matched to the context? And then also we were looking at, feasibility. Can people use it in their day-to-day workflows? And in terms of appropriateness, I think there's the most, depth in terms of the themes there, that it really modernizes and enriches communication. We wanted, as for my brother and my family, we wanted to know that soft information. We could see, changes and scores over time or whatever, but we wanted to know what day-to-day was happening, and that came out in people's quotes here too. Encourages day-to-day positive updates about loved ones, greater sense of connection between family and loved ones, including the extended family as well. Opportunity for families of residents to interact and build community, which was really nice. I have a quote to share on that. And then improve communication between parents and professionals, and fosters a more close, positive relationship between the parents and professionals. And if I may, I'll just go to a couple of quotes I'd like to read off. And they're not paying me to say this. This is just, their heart is in it.
I was just going to say, I haven't seen that invoice, so I was like,
So, what I love about Pletly is they're really, their heart is in it. I've been working with lots of different tech companies in the role that I play at Penn, and it's not always the case. They're not always there for the right reasons. And I could see, right? And I could see just right from the bat that, that from the get-go that Pletly are really there for the right reasons, which is so lovely to know. So it does, this is from a parent's perspective, a professional's perspective. So it does make it easier to communicate more positive information. I feel most of the time when we reach out to parents and guardians, it's always something bad happened, or we notify them about an incident. I think this platform, though, encourages more positive communication, like, hey, this is what's going on today and what we're doing. When typically our communication with parents is letting them know about some incident, some negative thing that's happening. So I think that the app is definitely a more positive type of communication. I do think it's valuable that way to let parents hear more positive things about what's going on during their kids' day. So that's a nice quote to highlight that. Another one about opportunities of families, of residents to interact and build community. And I swear I'm going to give this back in a second. It could be, let's all of us parents get together. Let's have a big picnic for the kids, or let's take them out or go on an outing or a certain park or a beach or whatever. The other families it's very rare that we communicate with each other otherwise, because there's no opportunity. And so completely, building bridges there to have more opportunity for families to connect. Another one relating to better informed or more responsive professional caregivers to the person served. So it takes time to learn the ins and outs of people we serve. We can kind of find out new information, but there's no way to communicate to other people. So I feel like this fills the gap. Yeah. Okay.
Can I stop you there? Is that all right?
Sorry.
'Cause I find this very interesting because it's, stemming from that, something happens when it comes to how you take that further on as a technologist. And I wanted to spend some time on that a bit later, but I want to ask the rest of the panel a couple of questions first. And you also touched into something very important, like technology fatigue, when it comes to testing in this space. And I think we should also spend some time on that, because that could be a hurdle that we need to overcome somewhat. Right, thanks very much for sharing, by the way. Dr. Elisabeth Sheridan, can I ask you, from your point of view, why is it so important to have like research-backed development in this field, and what are the potential consequences of not having it research-based?
Great questions. Actually, I think I'm perfectly suited to answer that after hearing your fireside chat as a parent caregiver's perspective, and then Dr. Nuske's beautiful summary of the research they're doing with this app, because they intersect perfectly, actually, and that families, at the end of the day, I know there are many caregivers in the room. I've seen lots of emphatic nods and yeses, and it is so hard. And at the end of the day, what Heather just said, that so often when families are hearing about their kids who have whatever special need it might be, autism, intellectual disability, other mental health challenges, they're always hearing the negative. They're always hearing the things that are going wrong, or the reasons they need to be called out of work to come get their kid, and to have something that has an evidence base behind it that can actually show that we're actually connecting people in meaningful ways, it will be an invaluable tool for our field. I actually have some colleagues at Drexel who are looking at apps, similar ideas and themes in different settings, and I can say the research is really hard. Like this is a long walk, and it needs to be funded. Hence the say, hey, investors, this is not something that NIH or our funding agencies here are just going to pick up and say, sure, let's see if this app works or doesn't. And I think one thing I hear from families is there's a saturation of apps in the marketplace that don't have that research backing. Yep. And so it's our job as scientists and clinicians and parents and caregivers to really advocate for doing this research, to know, does this work? Does this improve quality of life? Does this improve outcomes and actually help people? And I love research, so I'll talk about it all day, but I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Katie Ramsey, could you give some examples of projects you've been working on where research has become like practical solutions in the IDD autism space? Do you have any things you would share with us there?
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about one of the research studies I'm currently on and how important it is to integrate data and also multiple stakeholders' opinions on developing technology that's relevant to developmental disabilities. So one of the studies that I'm on right now is looking at early autism screening in primary care using computer vision-based tools, which sounds like a lot. And I think one of the important things that we've learned from it is that it's really, really vital to get a sense of what all the stakeholders have to say about it. And so that includes our primary care providers, of course, who are conducting these visits, but it also includes the families. It includes the people who are sitting in the waiting room and who have concerns and questions that they're waiting to have answered, and who might have some confusion about why they're being given this form and what it's even looking at, and why did they screen positive on this thing. And so one of the things that we're doing as part of the study is conducting focus groups with the PCPs and family members who participate in the study, so we can get a sense of the feasibility and acceptability of these tools, and whether there's anything that makes sense to be changed, whether there's any barriers to participating in studies that give us this really fruitful data, so we can help to address those barriers, whether it's access to transportation or food, or simply just providing the education on why these things are happening in the first place, so they can really truly give informed consent. And that way that data can be used really meaningfully and clinically, not just so we can say we have this new research tool, but so it can be used practically and really make a difference in families' lives.
Right. Thank you. Sarah. can ask you again, going back to Beme. How has your background from research is one thing, but the findings from studies that you've done, how have you used that practically in making decisions on how this solution was going to market?
Sure. Perhaps I can share a little bit about a current study that's multifaceted, that's also a part of our development. So right now, we are the data collection tool for a study with a hospital in Southern California. The study is looking at the connection between autism and epilepsy, something that often is co-occurring. And many of the subjects are limited speaking or non-speaking. I also have a child who is epileptic and autistic and limited speaking. So I know how difficult it is to get information directly from the child. This is very important in research. We want information, data, as objectively as we can from that individual. So we're using our data gathering platform, which is holistic in nature, and all of the data that it collects in this study. So we're getting all of this additional rich data. We also have built a module for this study that will collect data about pain and headaches. These are two of the main endpoints for this study. We're also working with a partner who has a device that is collecting biometric data with biomarkers for pain and affective states, so moods and emotions, in limited speaking individuals. So, very important, if we can capture this data and it's reliable passively, so it's just something that the individual is wearing, and we can accurately know when are they in pain, when are they anxious, when are they happy. We can connect that to everything else that's going on in their lives, and we can look at the outcomes that this woman is studying in relation to autism and epilepsy. It's also a path for commercialization for this device company to use it in a practical setting in the real world where it makes a difference.
Thanks very much. That seems like really important to get like the data points, the data, the objectivity, and also using that in advance of things happening. So thanks very much. Coming back to what we touched upon earlier, the technology fatigue. When we did this EmpathyTech in Oslo in June, we had the privilege of having Christopher Banks, the CEO of Autism Society of America, with us there to speak digitally, but still it was probably what most of us remembered best from that whole incident. And he talked about this technology fatigue. There's so many things that technology enthusiasts would like to have in the market, test on caregivers, test on people with the disabilities, and quite in an early phase as well. And he was quite skeptical about that. He was saying, well, if they come to me, I'm not going to be advocating this. Unless it's been tested quite a lot before and so on. So there's a catch-22 there, of course. But still, how do you see it as researchers and technologists, that technology fatigue? We need the data, we need to test things, but at the same time, we don't want to over-test things. We don't want to overwhelm people with things that, as you touched upon, they don't really understand. Why is this? What is this helping me? I'm already stressed out.
Yeah, maybe I can begin from the perspective of non-researcher, because on this panel I'm maybe the outlier, because you have your background as well. So just being the real tech nerd and the futurists, yeah. And if it was up to me, it's like beam me up, Scotty, plug me into the matrix.
Yeah,
and,
you're smart, Marius, but you're not this smart.
I'm not this smart. Oh, no. Not even close. But being in the perspective, look like for instance when I was lucky to start working with Nuske. There was so much learning in that process that we didn't even think of just having that perspective of that mindset of beam me up, Scotty. Just everything is great, technology is great. You have to kind of pull it back sometimes, and I'll take a step back and see the whole picture, get the proper feedback in the proper order. I'd never even heard about the framework that we are using with Pletly and Bancroft with Heather now before we started working together, and I was like, this is amazing. This is just how the approach should be. Because, as you said, the market could be saturated with a lot of well-intended products that are only based on anecdotal experiences, or because there's a new technology, or somebody creates a solution and they're looking for a problem, which is the complete opposite approach. And at the end of the day, what happens is when you are a family caregiver or a professional caregiver, and you get all those products thrown at you, at one point you will be able to throw up your hands. It's like, oh, no, I'm not even interested in learning about another app for X, Y, and Z, because you already have all these other applications just pushed down your throat, and it doesn't work, and it's just hindering your work life. It's just taking too much energy away from focusing on the patient or my child. And then you end up with the stress of it all, could even then enhance mental health issues, etc., etc. So for me, it was a real awakening. I started working with Dr. Nuske and amazing work with the rest of the team. So, yeah.
Can I ask you then, Sarah, before I ask the same question to you, how did you overcome that that potential barrier of not being able to test and so on?
Right. Well, these tools absolutely have to fit into the daily flow of life for families and the professionals that are using them. So in our case with Beme, we have everyone in the circle of care using the app, using our platform. So that's everyone from the primary caregivers to the educators at school, aides at school, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, babysitter, respite care worker, all the therapists that are on the team, and the medical professionals. So it needs to be usable by everyone based on the lens that they have, number one. So we developed Beme the first year of Beme, where we worked with about 250 families first, because we needed to understand how this would fit into their lives and what would be the return on their investment of their time for using it. And so we knew that we were going to be getting the bulk of the data from families, so we did very iterative development with them. We built something, we tested it. We built something else, we tested it. Same thing then, next phase was with the professionals. It had to fit into the daily flow of their life, into their practice. So very key, if you're going to get good data, you need to have something that people can use, and then that tool needs to be developed so that the data is as objective as it can be. It's a very good thing when you have multi-raters. So when you have multiple people inputting data about whatever it is that you want to study, you're going to get more reliable, well-rounded data if everyone with that individual is entering information. So that's another key thing about these technologies, is that we just want as much data as we can, as easy as we can. So we want research-grade tools that are easy to use, super easy to use on the front end as well.
Yep, thank you. Looking at it from your perspective, then, from an academic point, how do we get over that hurdle of we need the data, we need to test, but at the same time, we need them to give us the correct feedback. Otherwise, just answers isn't good enough. We need them to really understand what they're actually answering. How would you get about that from your perspective?
So yeah, I mean, we think about this all the time when we're designing studies, that is not going to be overly burdensome, but it's going to give us the data that we need to be able to show something is efficacious, or or it needs more work, or to get some feedback. And it's a hard balance to strike, because you want to get lots of information, to know whether it works, but that people are busy, and they don't have much time. You want to make it as easy as possible. So every study we have to really carefully think about finding that balance, and so that we get enough information. But they're not going to be, we're not going to be asking so much that it's prohibitive of them. And in research, we often incentivize them with paying them for, filling questionnaires out, of course, to do that. But that's not enough for people, that have very busy lives, very challenging. We've heard about all the challenges that caregivers face, and sort of adding an extra, ask of them can be a challenge. I think buy-in is very important. So working with the organization that you're partnering with, so that they realize that the end game is important. That we're trying to get this information through the study that is going to inform whether we adopt this technology or not, and showing them that actually could make their lives easier in the end. But it's hard because at the beginning they don't know. We don't know it until we know it. So at the beginning there's no data to show that it works until you start it. So yeah.
Do you want to add something, please?
Yeah, and I think Dr. Nuske just hit on a really important part. In the research we do more broadly, not just in app development and design, it's about who our stakeholders are and what the end point or goal is, right? So for caregivers, I loved how this morning the talk reframed, we often hear caregiver burden, and I love caregiver intensity. The intensity of these caregivers' lives, it's nonstop from wake up to bed. And so are we as researchers going in and asking them to add something to their already very full day because we think it's going to help us? That's our job, to instead reframe it as co-production. So we've heard iterative design, we've heard feedback from families. So can we go in with an idea, and like you all have said, this was from your lived experience. We knew there was a gap, we want to build this. It's our job then to test it, and that can be hard. It's an arduous, long road, and so I think having that patience and listening, sometimes researchers, including ourselves, need to just sit down and listen, because the feedback the lived experience is giving us is something we might not have even thought about, and that could totally change the trajectory of the next research questions we'll ask.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
Do you want to add something into that, Dr. Ramsey?
Yeah, I think just briefly, I highlight everything that you guys have already mentioned, and I think touching on the compensation part of what you said, of course, that's not the only piece of the puzzle, but one important part of investing and really supporting these kind of efforts is that caregivers' time and input is incredibly valuable. And, ultimately, we can say all day that we are experts in autism or intellectual disability or tech. Parents and caregivers are experts on their children and the people that they're caregiving for. And we need to be able to compensate them for the value that they're adding to the development of whatever product we're trying to output.
Thank you. So we looked at the importance of having research-based, to making these solutions. We need the research to back it up. In order to iterate as well, we need to count first, maybe, doing the activities and then count and then iterate, and then at some point coming back to more and more objective and more questionnaire-based things. That, of course, takes more time than just counting things that actually are happening. Listening to, I'm thinking about the whole idea of this event. It seems to me that there needs to be an empathy in the start here in order to understand that when we go out to these families and trying to ask them these questions about very significant things in their life, and they're already they don't have the time and they're stressed out already. It's like coming with an empathetic start point that might be part of the solution. If you understand that, then you don't push more than necessary, probably. Do you agree on that? Is that a necessity, or is it just me trying to figure out how to see it in this perspective?
I think so. Yes. So I actually have a quick anecdote that hits exactly on that. I grew up with someone who has high support needs autism, so intellectual disability and autism. She's now in her late 50s, has round-the-clock care. So I grew up watching her mom, my mom's best friend, navigate the world and looking for empathy in providers and caregivers and team members, and that wasn't always there, and I think that started my career journey in some ways. Flash forward a couple decades, and I'm in college working with a toddler with autism, and on his care team in 2003, we would all write in a notebook our notes, so the next therapist coming into the house, we had different colored pens, and it was paper pen binders. Then his mom texted me last night, he's now in his mid-20s, 21 years later, And the technology her team is using and the care with which the clinicians are thinking about his care has just rapidly shifted, and I think now includes more of exactly what you're talking about, the idea of the humans. It's not just the notes and the data and the move this program along, it's who are the humans that are in your home collecting that data? How are we connecting them to one another to know what actually happened in that session? And we didn't even have smartphones in 2003 to do that, right? So it's pretty neat actually to come how far we've come, but I think we hear all the time from patients and families, we still have so far to go.
Thank you. Okay, so we need more research, and we need researchers to do this, and we need empathetic technologists to take this further and understand this and put it together. How, or more the question of how would entrepreneurs then go about building the relationships and getting to know these researchers that are experts in their fields and or can do the research necessary? How would you, what would you say to them and others that are here today? How do they find you? How do they approach you? How do they do that?
I would say at events like this, you know, are really helpful for connecting people. Certainly, like, you know, find them online and reach out by email. I think, you know, conferences in general, scientific conferences, having entrepreneurs come there, and vice versa, you know, having researchers come to, you know, industry, you know, kind of events like this. That human connection, you know, I think can replace that. So reaching out, you know, talking with somebody about where their interests lie, what they want to do, you know, with the work they're doing, and you know, there's always a way to partner. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually having a meeting with somebody from Norway last week and talked about this panel actually, and she was like, almost like dumbfounded, like, how do you even get that kind of panel with those kind of researchers? You can't just knock on people's doors and ask them to attend the panel. And first and foremost, yes, you can. You can.
You call Joe.
Yeah.
His team.
Yeah. But it's all about building relations, the human factor. But we were lucky finding Heather, because that was just an accident. It's like they reached out on our behalf, built the report with Heather, and then we kind of had an open door. And one thing is from a US company or US startup to maybe easier navigate this, but coming from a European or Norwegian perspective, who has ambitions into the US, there might be our work to be done and figuring out how we can bridge these gaps and create some synergies and enable more collaboration with tech and research. So
yeah. As an entrepreneur, I would say you need to present researchers with something that changes the game for them, and show them this is going to be your connection to the real world with what you're doing, right? This is the impact that you can have with your study. I've participated in many think tanks with researchers that are doing very interesting things, but there's no connection to the real world. I put my parent hat on and I look at that and I go, would I enroll my child in that study? And many of them, I'd say, no, you know, I'm not going to take our time to do that because I don't see it going anywhere. So this whole circle has to come together with entrepreneurs and the researchers and the community and entrepreneurs.
Yes. And just, I think, trust. You just summarized the idea that we need trust across all relationships in that circle. And I can say, as a family member of many folks that have high support needs and or could use these technologies, I have that hat on anytime a researcher or anytime an industry person approaches me about a project. There is like a defensiveness almost of, are you doing this for the right reason? So thinking about like mission, vision, values, and that's what got me here today. It took 10 minutes of hearing about this this is coming from the right place to help people. It's not, there's a lot of people out there to make money right now and that are capitalizing on certain groups. And I think we are mindful when we get requests for meetings of who are you and why do you want to do this work?
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
So trust and understanding and storytelling about the value that this could bring on the impact field of that research is two very, very important factors. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. I think we're a bit rounding up here, but I wanted to ask all of you one last question. If we were to throw like a penny in the wishing well, all of us here, and you could say out loud, what would you like to see happen in order for more research being done in a field that you're occupied with, and more of those findings being distributed so they could turn into important information for health professionals, and of course technologies that could build beautiful solutions, and all of this applied to where help is actually needed, really making the impact. So throw that penny in the wishing well and say, what would you like to see happen? Anyone would like to start? I don't want me to put you on the spot here now, because I know this.
I sure.
Please.
More money for entrepreneurs who are building technologies that can actually make a difference. It's really hard for entrepreneurs like me to raise funds. You know, we are VC backed, we are PE backed, but we need to be able to tap into government money more easily.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be, when you're successsul, then we'll fund you.
Yeah.
So those partnerships need to start earlier with public agencies.
Yeah, so non-dilutable financing, because you run a business as well. Sometimes it's for-profit, sometimes it's not-for-profit, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So it's important that you keep the relevance there as an entrepreneur, that you're not totally diluted and lose like the importance of why you started this. So non-dilutable, in addition to VC backing, of course.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that, because that's one of the problems. Like having money as a startup to spend on a research project, that's not given. And it might also require the development period to be longer. You can't do the Mark Zuckerberg move fast and break stuff in this space. You don't want to break stuff, and you sometimes need to move slowly. And having both investors, VCs, and backing from government grants. We have one in Norway that we were fortunate enough to be a part of, is vital. So if we wouldn't have the Norwegian grant for research backing us, in addition to some investors who really believed in us and thought that this was the right approach, we wouldn't be able to do this. So as always, it's all about the money.
Yep. It's about the money.
Build on each other, because yes, and I want a lot of pennies. I have a lot of wishes.
Don't throw them all in the wishing well, just the one.
So I think my top penny is a recurring theme across a lot of work I do, which is academia is wonderful, and those papers you saw projected this morning, that gets us excited to read those papers. Our families don't want to read those papers, right? So we as academics need to have a better way of communicating our science and getting these technologies into the houses and schools and communities where we can use them. Yep. So that's implementation science, and that's messy and hard and takes a long time and a lot of funding. So I'm gonna come back to the money too. So yeah, it's yeah.
Well, I'm gonna just build on that again. So yes, and then if I could speed up time, for that would be my plug, to speed up time, because I know we're on different timelines, in tech development and research funding. Research funding takes so much time, So we're looking, a couple of years ahead, whereas entrepreneurs wanting to move, quicker than that, and so it can be really challenging because we would like to go down, the government route, and we probably will, but that also will take so much more time. And I know you want to, you have the energy, the momentum, enthusiasm. You want to do things quicker. So I don't think mine is really actionable, but speeding up time is what I would say.
And then I'll say yes. Information can't really be disseminated behind a paywall. I'm really excited about the promotion of community-based participatory research, in which people with and families of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are not just the target and the focus of research, but they're actually playing a collaborative role in the development of the idea from the start, and how that goes about being carried out and then being involved in disseminating those results to the general public. So I think that that's my penny.
Really good. Yeah, I love that point, and I think that in some ways can help speed up the time as well, because you're already looking at what you need to build and finding that information through those like authentic partnerships from the beginning. So, definitely a plug for using, those kind of frameworks where we have in all the individuals around the table there right from the beginning.
Because we have been discussing the future of EmpathyTech, because it's something bigger than we imagined when we started it, and one of them being establishing a non-profit organization where we could have donations and supporters help us with finance, who could maybe enable startups and researchers to have more financial backing. Is that something that could be interesting as a solution, maybe?
Yes. Yes and yes.
Okay. Let's talk.
I think we ended up with a lot of yeses. That's seldom a bad thing. Really appreciate you taking the time and telling us about the important work you do and where all this comes from. Actually, people doing the work, working the 16 hour days, day in and day out. And being backed with people that could take this to a different level. And a bit later during the day, we'll hear from the people with the money as well. So they better step up. Now we've heard that we have the empathy, we have that in here already, yeah, and we're building the trust today. So the last component is the money, and you know who you are. Yeah. So thanks very much, and give them a warm applause.